Networking and partnerships. Okay, you have reached the final session in our program. I hope at this point you're feeling more confident about navigating SLED and that you've picked up some strategies you can use to really take advantage of some of the unique aspects of this market. Now, networking and partnerships are an important part of any go-to-market strategy, but they take on even more importance in SLED because it's truly a relationship-based market. So, learning objectives for this session. First off, we're going to talk about how networking works in the public sector. You know, there are rules and regulations in place here that make it a little bit different from what you may be used to in the private sector, so we'll cover that. And we'll talk about where you can go to actually network with SLED entities, and we'll then jump into 3 common types of partnerships that you see in SLED. So the one everybody knows, the prime contractor, subcontractor type of partnership. And we'll talk more about some marketing, referral partnerships, and then paid partnerships as well. Okay, so public sector networking. You can't wine and dine or take your clients out golfing in this market, right? That's illegal. So you need to be doing things a little bit differently. Don't even try to invite public sector clients out to dinner or to golf or to go to a baseball game or something. It won't go well for you. It's never a good idea. Just stay away from it. That's one way to show that you don't understand this market is by asking a client to break a law, right? So don't do that. Know that it's different here. But just because you can't take your client out for a beer doesn't mean you can't develop a relationship with them. So in public sector networking, you know, the goal of working with SLED clients, networking with SLED clients, is to earn their trust as a partner that can help them achieve their goals and solve the issues they are facing. So much like we talked about in creating effective messaging and marketing to your SLED clients, the goal really here is to educate. You want to show that you are a partner with public entities and you are there to educate them about how you have solutions to help address the issues that they are dealing with, the initiatives that they have been asked to address. You want to educate them about those issues, about solutions to those issues, and earn their trust. That's the goal of public sector networking. Now, of course, to do that, you actually have to find employees of SLED governments and talk to them. So there are a lot of places you can do that, right? A lot of different associations and things we've talked about before. And all of these groups, they have conferences. Just like you have in the private sector, you will go to conferences, you might get a booth and have different SLED clients come by and talk to them. That's no different than what you see in the private sector. But what is a little different is that because you can't take your clients out golfing or wine and dine them, when you go to these events, know that the public sector employees there are very open to networking and to learning from you and hearing about what you have to say and how you can help them deal with their issues because they don't have other opportunities. So a reception at a conference here is one of the only times you can ever have a beer with a potential client and just kind of shoot the shit and get to know them a little bit and talk about the issues they have in a more informal setting. And so you really want to take advantage of those opportunities and go to these conferences when you can, even if you're not going as a vendor. Sometimes it's great to just go as and listen, right? Just get a ticket and sit in the audience and talk to people. That could be a great way to network with SLED clients. And sometimes you may want to have a booth or things like that, but just showing up can be a great way to meet folks in this industry and have opportunities to talk about them in a more one-on-one sort of real fashion where you can kind of get into things in a little bit different manner than you might over a phone call or a Zoom or whatever. Let's get into partnerships. Partnerships are really important in SLED for a number of reasons. So let's break them down here. The 3 types of partnerships we'll talk about are the prime subcontractor partnership, and that's likely what most people think about when we're talking about partnerships in the public sector. But there are other types, and we'll talk about those as well. So there is also a partnership type that, I just made this up, but I call it marketing or referral partnerships. But there are a lot of opportunities to co-market with other companies and nonprofit groups or academic institutions and things like that. And those can be really effective in SLED. And then paid partnerships, pay to play, right? You can join as a corporate partner of different associations or municipal leagues and things like that as well. And those can be beneficial to you at times. So we'll go ahead now and cover each of these in a bit more depth. Prime contractor, subcontractor. Just about everybody's familiar with this relationship, right? A prime contractor typically owns or has won a bid with a SLED client for a large-scale project, and then they will subcontract out aspects of that contract, of that bid, to other vendors. Typically, the prime presents a united front as a team to submit an RFP response, and so these teams and the prime contractor-subcontractor relationship is formed prior to any contracts being awarded. So if you think about the way that governments purchase, remember the purchasing motivation in SLED is different than the private sector. They are often making purchases to achieve some sort of visionary type of initiative, right? That was set forth by the city council or the mayor or something, right? And this motivation for purchasing naturally leads to these sort of large, ambitious projects that by their nature just require multiple specialties. So I've been involved in a lot of projects like this where the team consisted of on-the-ground engineers, maybe a construction crew, legal teams, data analysts, right? These are big projects with a lot of moving parts, a lot of different specialties, and a prime contractor is responsible for making sure that all of that work gets done and that the government with whom they're contracted with is reporting just to the prime. So the prime essentially has responsibility. So a lot of contracts in SLED and other aspects of the public sector are going to go through this process of being awarded to a prime contractor with a team of subcontractors involved. And so if you're going to do work in SLED, you need to understand this relationship. You'll likely be involved in these sort of relationships if you're in this space for a while and are having some success here. So let's talk a little more about it. Well, first off, who are the prime contractors? So prime contractors are usually larger firms, but not always. Sometimes there are some sort of mid to large established firms. I previously worked for a company that was about 100 people, and they did a ton. They had a ton of prime contracts and did a ton of subcontracting. And then I've worked for larger firms that did less. So it's not always determined by size, but generally speaking, they are well established in the industry. They've typically been working in the space for a long time, and they have these long-standing relationships and long-standing great reputation with SLED clients. And a lot of the companies that you see who come in as primes are going to be folks that are in engineering, construction, architecture, could be planning firms. And in the tech space, you'll see a lot of large IT systems integrators, managed service providers, those sorts of consulting type clients. And these are typically who the primes are. Granted, I've just named a few, but the main thing to know is that the prime contractors typically do have these long-standing relationships with SLED clients. So I get asked this all the time, which is, if you're breaking into SLED, you often want to come in as a subcontractor to a prime. And there are a number of reasons you'll want to do that. One is that if you're just breaking into the market, it's easier to land work with a prime contractor than it is to land work directly with a SLED client. And two, prime contractors, because they have these long-standing relationships, can really help open up the market for you. But it's not simple or necessarily easy to just get on board with a big prime contractor. So in order to do that, you really got to start thinking from the prime contractor's perspective. And what do primes want from their subs? Well, one thing they definitely want is their subcontractors to give them a competitive advantage in the bidding process. Remember, these teams are formed before a contract is awarded. So a prime is going to assemble a team of subcontractors, present that united front in the proposal in the response to an RFP, and then hope to win that award, and then the work happens and the money flows and all of that. So the primes are looking for subcontractors that are going to help them win an RFP. Things a subcontractor can do to help a prime win an RFP are, well, there are a number of things. First off, all the way to the left, certifications. If you have a minority business enterprise certification, veteran-owned business, women's-owned business, all of these various certifications you can get are very appealing to prime contractors. The reason for that is many, not all, but many RFPs will award points to primes. And in some cases, it's required that primes will use and designate a certain allocation of the contract they're awarded to subcontractors with specific certifications. So if you are eligible for any type of certification, it's absolutely worth putting in time to make sure you get it official and then to market that out there, to get it on your website, post about it on social media. If you don't know whether you're eligible, research it. You can Google it and you'll find it. Some of them might be state specific, others may not be. But it is certainly worth looking into and just getting those certifications in place if you can. So aside from the certifications, primes are also looking for subs with specific expertise, right? If you can come in with some sort of niche area that a prime would like to sort of showcase as a way to maybe outdo the competition, that's great. So know what your niches are, know where you excel, and market those things as well. There are oftentimes RFPs will award additional points or require primes to work with locally owned and operated subs. So if there's a large contract in your local area, it's good for you to know about that and to get on the phone and talk to some of the larger prime contractors who are likely to be bidding on that. Reputation. So if you have a good reputation with SLED clients, primes will know that and they will seek to work with you because that will help them in the RFP response process. And then economics, right? Ultimately, the primes are dealing with the money, right? They are the ones who have to come up with the bid. They're the ones who need to, in addition to making sure that they win the project, also make sure that they are coming in the black, not losing money on the project, and that they have enough money for other subs in this process. So when you're trying to break in, I often tell people, when you're marketing to SLED clients directly, the budget's kind of set. There's not necessarily a reason to sort of drop your price. You can usually, what they're going to spend. It's a little different with primes. Primes have more wiggle room and they can make more money from having less expensive subs. So if you're looking to break in and you're looking to break in with primes, lowering your rates to get in can, in this case, be a bit more effective than it is when you're contracting directly with a SLED client. Now, what do the SLED clients actually want from the subs? Because that's ultimately what determines whether or not you as a team win. And so, again, if you think about it from the perspective of the SLED client thinks that in a perfect world, they wouldn't have to use subs. The reality is that because of these ambitious, multifaceted projects, they just have to. So what they want to see between their prime and subcontractors is cohesion. They love to see them as a united front you always need to present that united front. So if you're a prime, ideally your team has been working together for a long time. Obviously, that doesn't help you if you're trying to break into the market. So you need to make it look like you know each other. The reality is that many times I have been a prime contractor and have been scrambling to get a certain partner in place at the last minute, and I maybe had my first ever conversation with them. That happens, but it's not ideal. In fact, if you're in a prime, you're typically always trying to develop a roster of partners so that you can build relationships, you can do marketing together, write blog posts, and sort of establish a documented relationship between yourself and the sub, even if you haven't actually worked together in a project. And now, fewer subs equals less risk and less paperwork for the primes. So if you're a sub who can do multiple things, great. Try to do that, right? Again, in a perfect world, SLED clients wouldn't need to have primes and subs. It just introduces more paperwork, more risk. So they don't want to have a lot of subs. But unfortunately, that's just how it works with these big projects. So again, you always want to present a united front. You want to make the client feel like they're not working with subs or not working with a whole bunch of other companies. You're just one team. That's what you want to present if you're trying to market yourself to a prime. And then if you're part of a team as a sub or as a prime, and you're trying to market and sell or respond to an RFP coming from a SLED client. So how do you get in front of primes? There are a few different ways to do that, and we talked about some of them already. If you have any certifications, market them. Also, cold call. I say this isn't really the best thing to do in SLED, but that's actually, again, a little bit different if you're talking about trying to market to primes. Primes are in the market for subs. They want to know that you are out there. So if you send cold emails or cold calls, just pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, we do this, and we are looking to get on these contracts. This is how we work. This is what we can do. Here's some information about us. They will be open to that, much more so than an actual SLED client would be, right? So if you're trying to market to primes, cold calls, emails, all of that stuff is completely worthwhile, right? So keep that in mind and know that, those tools, those methods, while not as effective when you're trying to get directly in front of a SLED client, can be very effective in marketing yourself to prime contractors. There are matchmaking services out there as well, especially if you have one of these, like a veteran-owned business or a women's-owned business certification. There are matchmaking services where you can meet some of these very large prime contractors because, again, they are typically looking to have that sort of roster of subcontractors they can bring in when those contractors are likely to help them win a project. And then lastly, and frankly, what I think is the most effective way to market to prime contractors is to actually just market to the SLED clients. Remember, prime contractors typically have these long established relationships with SLED clients. So if you get a SLED client talking about you because they've seen your marketing materials and they think you're really interesting, the primes are going to know that, right? They're going to learn that and they're going to want to work with you. You'll have primes competing over you, which is the best case scenario. So marketing directly to SLED clients is a great way to build your reputation with big prime contractors. All right, let's move on from the prime subcontractor relationship and talk a little bit about marketing and referral partnerships. So what I mean by this is these are really informal, but again, government contracts, they support these large multifaceted projects. So when you're looking to market and you're looking to establish yourself as an expert in some particular initiative or issue area, it's great to seek out partnerships with these sort of adjacent businesses that provide products or services that are likely to be paired in one of these large multifaceted projects. So an example I'll use is I did a lot of work previously with law firms. did a lot of data analysis work that supported different projects or cases that had legal components. And so I did blog posts with legal teams and attorney groups, webinars, those sorts of things, right? And the reason for that is, one, you're starting to build that message of you're a united front. So if a contract or an RFP were to come down the line, you've got a team in place. You've got a group who's got that as sort of documented track record of knowing each other and working together. But you also just expand your presence, right? You can reach more people and gain exposure that way. And then you start getting referrals. You can monetize that by saying, setting up finder's fees and things like that. Or you can just, do folks a solid and, you get your sort of friends in these adjacent industries, adjacent businesses that aren't your competitors, and you send work back and forth. And this happens all the time in this market. And now these co-marketing opportunities can be really effective, especially if you get creative with it and start thinking about partnering with academic institutions, mission-driven organizations. Remember, public services are serving communities. As a result, there are a lot of academic institutions and nonprofits who are doing similar work, and they will always want to help promote themselves and partner with you to do that. So these partnerships, again, they can be really valuable, gain exposure, set yourself up for RFPs that come down the line. And, these are informal, but they can make a lot of difference, especially when you're trying to break into the market. Okay, pay to play, membership association partnerships. I know I've talked a lot about the membership associations, and, the reason is that they're important in this market. But one thing you should know is really that just about every one of these membership associations, not all of them, but most of them are going to offer a corporate partnership. And you can pay to be a corporate partner. Typically, those come with a set of benefits at a certain payment tier. And those benefits can be things like, hey, you get to write a blog post on the association's website, or you might get a discount to their conference. Sometimes there's an ad in a newsletter or some sort of email that goes out. Sometimes you can get invitations to member-only events where you can get some great market intel. If there's podcasts, there may be opportunities to talk about a particular issue or initiative on a podcast. And sometimes these things can be really worth your while, and sometimes they aren't. It's hard to know going in whether or not these are going to really help you. I just recommend, before you become a corporate partner, especially some of them can be quite expensive. And before, going down that path, do a little research. Not all of these associations or corporate programs are created equal, but you can usually see the list of corporate partners, and it can be worth just calling some of those folks up and seeing if they think there's value. Granted, you probably don't want to call up your competitors and ask that, but you can find some other companies in there that aren't your direct competitors and ask them about their experience. Again, some of these can be quite valuable and you'll really get a return. Others, you probably won't. I've been burnt on these a couple times, and other times I've had great success. So just do your research before diving in here. And, another note about these programs is don't be afraid to get creative, because these membership associations, they have an interesting business model. They collect member dues. So if you're using the example of cities and like the National League of Cities or a state municipal league, the cities are paying dues to be part of their group. But those dues typically don't cover everything. And membership or associations never want to be in the position of continuing to raise member dues. They'd rather not do that. It's not a good look for them. So they offer these corporate sponsorship programs as a way to supplement that revenue. They also provide education and events, and in some cases, they'll even do contracting and act as a prime contractor. They also do these things called member pooling programs. Now, all of that is to say there can be opportunities to get creative in your partnerships with membership associations. especially if you are going to put them in a position where they may actually make some additional revenue not coming from their member dues. So again, none of these associations are created equal. They're all sort of different. You need to do your research, but don't be afraid to get creative. And if you have a good idea, present it to them. See what they say. Ask for things in your partnership. Tell them, hey, this doesn't really fit what we're looking for. Can we do this? And you never know what you'll hear. So do your research. These things can really pay off in the right situation. Other situations, they can frankly be a waste of money. So again, do your research and try to figure that out before you dive in. And that's it. That is the end of this presentation, and this is our last session in the program. Again, I hope that you have found it helpful and have learned a lot and feel really confident and excited and ready to go and sell more and make more money in SLED. Thank you.